Well, Ohio rolled out its meat processing grant. I'm Ty Higgins with Ohio Farm Bureau, along with Brandon Kern. He is the organization's Senior Director of State and National Policy. And Brandon, when we talk about meat processing across Ohio, we saw some challenges in 2020 that kind of added to some of the stressors in rural America and rural Ohio, and the reason this grant program was put into place. Talk about how this conversation started and what Ohio Farm Bureau had to do with putting this processing grant in place.
Yeah, so this is a conversation that really even predated the pandemic, but the pandemic really brought it home, I think, for a lot of people. When you started to see the severe disruption in the supply chain. And so for consumers, that was at the grocery store, right? A lack of product on the shelves in some circumstances. For the farmer, it was, I can't move livestock who I was intending to move into the processing side of the supply chain. I can't move them off the farm right now because they're shut down. And so that really kind of brought home the vulnerability that we have in our current supply chain and we were kind of aware of this before, but I think for policymakers, it made it very real. And so we started talking about ways, that we can address this through policy. And this is, I think, a great step forward for helping create additional options out there for processing at the local level on a smaller scale. So it's exciting.
Yeah, you think about what happened back in 2020 when we started to see a little less meat at the grocery store. People were wondering where that beef and pork and chicken was going to come from. Reached out to local farmers, and then we reached capacity and overcapacity at those local and regional meat processing facilities. So this grant offers up a lot of money to those processors and ones that want to get involved in the industry and really expand their operations. So talk about how much is in this grant and what those funds will be utilized for.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are grants that are going to be available at up to a level of $250,000 for each processor. And, this existing program that is being rolled out now has a pretty strong preference for existing processors out there to expand. And so, things that they can use the dollars for: buying machinery and equipment, upgrading their technology on the processing floor, training their workforce. One of the things we hear a big need for out there is cold storage. So not just the actual processing floor capacity, but cold storage to be able to manage the whole supply chain. Because the processing the animal is one thing, but trying to keep up with that meat supply. So cold storage is a big thing. And so refrigeration is something that can be included in this as well. So that's all. These are really needed aspects, and all those things can be used by meat processors under this grant. So it's pretty flexible.
A lot of our members realize that we're a part of the policy development process in Columbus and in Washington, D.C. But for this particular piece of legislation and this grant, we were there from day one working with lawmakers. A lot of them didn't really know what was needed as far as local and regional processing. Talk about Ohio Farm Bureau's fingerprints on this particular legislation and other groups we worked with to make it happen.
Yeah, so this is a great story of grassroots action. In action, I should say, grassroots activity in action in the policy sector, because this whole started with conversations with some of our local Farm Bureau folks. I can tell you, like in particular in Gallia County here in Ohio, we have an existing meat processor who works very closely with farmers down in that community, and they were interested in being able to expand, but limited on resources and the ability to be able to do that. And so we started this conversation started at the local level. County Farm Bureau leaders, the County Farm Bureau president down there in Gallia County got linked up with our staff here at Ohio Farm Bureau. We started talking about the need, and then we took the idea to legislators, and they, having all this recent background that we already talked about, Ty, with COVID and everything, it was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's get this done. So we started talking about these things that we rattled off that the grant is eligible for, are the things that the farmers and the meat processors that we were talking to at the local level told us they needed to have support for. And so you can see it show up now in a statewide program that's going to be available to all processors, going to benefit all farmers across the state. So it's a pretty cool story. And Gallia County was a big part of it, but we've got some folks out in Western Ohio who are really interested in this as well. So it's really got statewide interest, but it started at that regional, local level and just kind of scale it up.
Well, you talk about expansion, and this kind of expands both ways. The meat processor is kind of that middle ground for your meat products, and on the back end of that is the farmer that wants to get it processed at that facility. And of course, this is also going to help the consumer and that supply chain there locally and regionally as well to make sure the products are there, the products they want are there when they need it on down the line. Brandon Kern, Senior Director of State and National Policy with Ohio Farm Bureau. Thank you.
Anytime, Ty. Anytime.
I'm Ty Higgins. We'll see you down the road.